For 5 years, he mopped the floors of the federal courthouse while judges and lawyers walked past him like he didn't exist. Marcus Thompson was invisible to them, just another maintenance worker in a blue uniform, pushing a cart through marble hallways where million-dollar cases were decided and careers were made. They had no idea that the man cleaning their offices had once stood between presidents and assassins, that he'd earned the highest security clearances in the federal government, that he'd briefed world leaders on national security threats, and had personally saved 3 presidents' lives during his 18 years with the Secret Service. But when a gunman targeted Judge Patricia Wells that Tuesday morning in September, the invisible janitor showed them exactly why Secret Service agents never really retire from protecting people. Because some training runs deeper than any job title, and some instincts never fade, no matter how many people treat you like you don't matter. The James V. Hansen Federal Courthouse in Ogden, Utah. 8 stories of granite and glass where federal judges hear cases that range from white-collar crime to terrorism charges. It's the kind of building where power suits and briefcases define who matters, and where everyone else, security guards, clerks, maintenance staff, blends into the institutional background. Marcus Thompson had been part of that background for 5 years. Every morning at 6 a.m., he'd arrive with his cart of cleaning supplies, his keys to every office, and his invisible status that let him move through the building unnoticed and unacknowledged. The judges knew him as the janitor. The lawyers called him maintenance guy when they called him anything at all. The federal prosecutors would continue their phone conversations as if he wasn't in the room, discussing classified case details while Marcus emptied their trash cans. "Excuse me," they'd say when he was in their way, not looking up from their documents. "Could you come back later?" They'd wave him off like he was an interruption in their important day, never imagining that the man with the mop had once been briefed on threats to national security that would keep them awake for weeks. But Marcus didn't mind being invisible. In fact, after 18 years of hypervigilance, of scanning crowds for threats and seeing danger in every face, there was something peaceful about being overlooked. Marcus Thompson had joined the Secret Service at 24 after 4 years in the Army and a degree in criminal justice. He'd started on the forgery detail, tracking down counterfeiters and credit card fraud rings. Good work, important work, but not what he'd dreamed of. The Presidential Protection Detail had been different. It was the pinnacle of federal law enforcement, the elite assignment that required perfect physical condition, flawless judgment, and the willingness to take a bullet for someone you might not even personally like. Marcus had been selected after 6 years of proving himself, and for the next 12 years, he'd been part of the human shield around the most powerful person on Earth. He'd served under 3 presidents. He'd traveled to 47 countries, stood in rooms with world leaders, and been present for conversations that shaped international policy. He'd been shot at twice, had tackled potential assassins 3 times, and had once saved President Obama's life by spotting a sniper's nest that other agents had missed. The Distinguished Service Cross in his apartment drawer was for that day in Prague, when Marcus had seen something wrong with a building's roofline during a presidential motorcade route. His threat assessment had been accurate. There had been a gunman, and Marcus's quick action had prevented what could have been an international catastrophe. But 18 years of that level of stress, of constant threat assessment, of living in a world where everyone was a potential enemy, had taken its toll. Marcus had developed what the service psychologists called hypervigilance fatigue. He couldn't turn off the part of his brain that saw dangers everywhere, that analyzed every person, every situation, every possible threat vector. When he'd retired in 2019 at age 54, Marcus had thought civilian life would be peaceful. No more 12-hour days, no more briefings on assassination attempts, no more scanning crowds for faces that didn't belong. But peaceful turned out to be restless.
Marcus found himself missing the sense of purpose, the knowledge that his skills were protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. The courthouse job had been perfect. Federal building security meant background checks and controlled access. The work was simple, but
Tuesday, September 14th, 2024, 7:30 a.m. Marcus was cleaning the third-floor offices where the federal judges worked. Judge Patricia Wells's chambers were always his first stop because she arrived early and liked her office spotless before her assistant came in. Judge Wells was a 20-year veteran of the federal bench, known for her tough sentences in organized crime cases and her fearless handling of domestic terrorism trials. She'd received death threats before, but that was part of the job when you're sending gang leaders and extremist group members to federal prison. As Marcus emptied her trash and dusted her law books, Judge Wells was reviewing case files for the day's hearings. She barely acknowledged his presence, a polite nod, maybe a good morning, if she was in a particularly good mood. Marcus didn't take it personally. After 18 years of protecting people who rarely said thank you, he understood that some service was invisible by design. But as Marcus moved through his routine, part of his mind was cataloging details that seemed off. Small things, wrong things. The new security guard at the main entrance had been asking too many questions about the judge's schedules. Not suspicious on its own, but unusual for someone who'd only been working there for 2 weeks. The maintenance request for Judge Wells's chambers had come from an outside contractor, not the usual facilities management company. Again, not necessarily a problem, but different from the established pattern. And this morning, there was a man in the lobby who'd been there yesterday, too, sitting in different chairs but always with a clear line of sight to the elevators. He looked like a lawyer, expensive suit, leather briefcase, but lawyers don't usually spend 2 days in a row sitting in courthouse lobbies. Individually, these were minor anomalies, but Marcus's training had taught him that anomalies cluster around trouble. When patterns change, when routines get disrupted, when new faces appear in secure environments, it usually means something is being planned. Marcus finished cleaning Judge Wells's office and moved to the hallway. But instead of going to the next office on his route, he positioned himself where he could see the elevator bank and the stairwell access. If someone wanted to reach Judge Wells, they'd have to come through one of those choke points. He didn't have to wait long. At 8:47 a.m., except Marcus noticed things that others wouldn't see. The man's suit jacket was buttoned despite the warm weather, a sign that he might be concealing something underneath. His briefcase was held in his non-dominant hand, keeping his strong hand free. And he was sweating, not from the heat, but from stress, the kind of nervous perspiration that comes from preparing to do something terrible. Marcus began moving parallel to the man, using his cart as cover while maintaining visual contact. To anyone watching, he was just the janitor going about his work, but his route was calculated to intercept if necessary. The man stopped outside Judge Wells's chambers and knocked. "Judge Wells, I have some documents that require your immediate attention." Marcus was close enough now to see the man's hands shaking slightly as he reached for the door handle. Close enough to notice that the documents in the manila envelope felt rigid, like they contained something other than paper. When Judge Wells opened her door, Marcus saw the man's posture shift. His weight moved to the balls of his feet. His free hand moved toward his jacket, and his breathing pattern changed from nervous to predatory. Marcus had seen this exact sequence before, in crowds at presidential events, in hotel lobbies during foreign trips, in the split second before someone tries to hurt the person you're sworn to protect. "Judge Wells," the man said, stepping into her office, "we need to discuss your sentencing decision in the Kozlov case." Marcus knew the Kozlov case, a Russian organized crime figure who Judge Wells had sentenced to life without parole. The kind of case that generates revenge fantasies and long-term grudges. As the door started to close, Marcus made his choice. The same choice he'd made dozens of times over 18 years. The choice that defined what it meant to be Secret Service. Run toward the danger, not away from it. Marcus moved quickly but quietly, using the skills that had once protected presidents to protect a federal judge. He reached Judge Wells's office just as he heard her voice change from professional courtesy to alarm. "Sir, you need to leave my office immediately. I'm calling security." "No, Your Honor. You're not calling anyone." Through the partial, Marcus pushed the door open and stepped into the office. "Excuse me," he said in the same mild tone he used when asking lawyers to move so he could empty their trash. "I need to finish cleaning in here." The gunman spun toward him, confused by the interruption. For just a moment, he was caught between two targets: the judge he'd come to kill and the janitor who'd walked in at the worst possible time. That moment of confusion was all Marcus needed. He moved like he'd been trained to move, fast, decisive, with 18 years of muscle memory guiding his actions. His left hand swept up to deflect the gun barrel, while his right hand struck the gunman's wrist with enough force to break bones and disrupt grip strength. The pistol clattered to the floor. The gunman tried to recover, reaching for the weapon, but Marcus was already inside his reach, applying a control hold that he'd used on everyone from drunk party crashers to trained foreign operatives. Within 5 seconds, the would-be assassin was face down on Judge Wells's Persian rug, his arms secured behind his back in a position that would cause excruciating pain if he tried to move. "Judge Wells," Marcus said calmly, still maintaining the hold, "please call FBI and request immediate assistance. Tell them we have a potential assassination attempt in custody." Judge Wells, who moments before had barely acknowledged the janitor's existence, stared at Marcus with a mixture of shock and dawning recognition. "Who? What? How did you?" ? "Ma'am, I'll explain everything to the FBI when they arrive. Right now, I need you to make that call." FBI Special Agent Jennifer Cruz was the first federal agent on scene. She'd been investigating threats against federal judges for 6 years, and she'd seen everything from amateur stalkers to professional hitmen. But she'd never seen a janitor subdue an armed assassin with textbook Secret Service techniques. "Sir," Agent Cruz said to Marcus, who was still maintaining the control hold on the gunman, "can you tell me your name?" "Marcus Thompson," he replied. "Former Secret Service, Presidential Protection Detail, retired 2019. Agent Cruz's expression changed immediately. "Agent Thompson? I know that name. You were Obama detail, right? Prague incident?" Marcus nodded. "Among other things." "Jesus," Agent Cruz said quietly. "What are you?" What he hadn't planned for was running into a Secret Service agent. Agent Cruz conducted the debriefing personally. "Agent Thompson," she said, "your threat assessment was perfect. You identified multiple indicators that our security team missed. How did you know?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "When you've spent 18 years looking for people who want to kill presidents, you develop an eye for threats. The patterns don't change much, whether it's the White House or a courthouse. Why didn't you report your suspicions earlier?" "To whom?" Marcus asked. "I'm the janitor. Who's going to listen to maintenance staff talking about security threats?" The story made national news, but Marcus Thompson didn't want the attention. He'd spent his career in the background, protecting people who never knew how close they'd come to danger. The invisibility had been part of the job, but Judge Wells insisted on a formal recognition ceremony. "Agent Thompson," she said at the courthouse gathering, "I owe you my life. We all owe you more than we realized. The federal courthouse now has a different security protocol." Marcus Thompson was offered positions with FBI, U.S. Marshals, and private security firms. But he chose to stay where he was. The only change is his title. He's now officially the security liaison for the courthouse, still doing maintenance work, but also conducting threat assessments and security consultations. The judges and lawyers who once walked past him like he didn't exist now stopped to shake his hand, to ask about his family, to remember that the person keeping their workplace safe might have more to offer than they ever imagined. Marcus still mops the floors. He still empties the trash cans and dusts the law books. But he's no longer invisible. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Sometimes the people we don't see are the ones seeing everything. Sometimes the person you ignore in the hallway is the same person who would step between you and a bullet without hesitation. Marcus Thompson spent 18 years protecting presidents, but his most important day of service might have been the day he was just the janitor who happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills. The next time you see someone in a service job, maintenance, security, cleaning staff, remember Marcus Thompson, because you never know what kind of training, experience, and courage might be hiding behind a uniform that makes someone invisible. Heroes don't retire. They just change uniform.